Improvisation is not chaotic. There is order, structure, form, and strategy of playing. These circumstances does not eliminate the idea of improvisation as unplanned method. It just simply helps set the boundaries. This week, we look at Keith Jarrett's Cone Concert from 1975. On the topic of improvisation and chaos, tonight's show, we see Mom in the upper left with Dad. She has got some words on this album, and Phil's along for the journey as well. So, Phil, it's been 40 weeks or so since we've seen you. So, welcome back onto the show. Welcome back to the journey.
Drew, when you said we had a special guest, I thought Taylor Swift was going to join us tonight.
No. That's next week.
That's next week. Okay, all
next week. Our super special guest
might be
none other than Pat Rice. Might be what, Dad?
Might be a woman whose initials are MS.
So what's
first name Maria?
Right? One day soon, I'm sure. So let's get into it.
All right. Let's start off then. Dad, tell us what's new.
Yes. Every week I'm excited about the new artist of the week, and this week it's an album by Dave Grusin and Lee Ritenour, and it's titled Brazil. And Dave and Lee have been together playing music since the 70s. And they recorded this May the 21st of 2024 on the Candid record label. It's kind of started because Ritenour's wife, Carmen, is Brazilian, and she influenced these two guys and a bunch of group members to get together and play this music. Ritenour was born at 52. Grusin was born in 34. I did not see anywhere where he has already passed. So here's a man of some age. One thing you might be impressed with, and the last thing I'll say, is that Ritenour is part of the original, Matt, do you know? The original Foreplay.
Oh, yep.
Foreplay.
Yep.
Which you introduced me to Foreplay years ago.
A long time ago.
And I kind of got caught up with that. And on occasion, I go back to those albums and play their music. So the new album, Brazil, released in 24, folks will like it.
Well, I know that we texted earlier, and I don't know where you're coming up with them, but this week's album, another banger, another home run for sure. The only comment I'm going to make is I didn't care for the vocal tracks as much as just the instrumental tracks. The instrumental tracks are spot on, banging. Loved them. The vocal tracks, because they're Brazilian, you can't understand the lyrics, the words. They were just okay for me. But overall, great pick.
It's interesting as you listen to each track, the Brazilian words are transposed into English. So that's helped me identify. I think the first one is something in cinnamon, not garlic and cinnamon, but maybe sugar and cinnamon. But be that as it may, I encourage our followers to listen to Brazil.
Good deal.
Hot dog.
Cloves and cinnamon.
Cloves. That's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Thanks for doing that, Dad.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
Phil, we weren't sure what we were going to call it. Old Man and New Music, but you can help us come up with the name for that segment.
Careful.
So let's what?
He's on mute.
Oh,
New man, old music.
New man. Yeah, new man.
New Man Old Music.
All right.
Now, again, this week we are covering Keith Jarrett, the Cone Concert. I'll have that slide up on screen for us right now. And Matt,
Well-
let's start with your pick of audio.
Okay, I like that. We're gonna do part one now. On this album, there's it's broken up into parts, and so I think all of us kind of picked part one, which is fine. But I want part one starting right at about 4 minutes 50 seconds, and just play me a minute of that, will you?
We'll go to 1 minute. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut it right there.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
it's soulful. You can feel his soul releasing on the keyboard. You can feel his energy coming out everywhere. I like the clip because, and we'll talk about it here during Phil's clip as well. But the vocalese, he's singing along with what he's playing, and coming up in the slideshow, we'll find out why that he can do that because not everyone can do that. A lot of people can, but not everyone could do that.
Yep. Phil, you had we had talked about
Yeah.
clips briefly.
I said that same one, but I had picked out like around 10, right around 10.
All right, I'll stop it there. Ooh, he's really getting into it.
And again, he's only 10 minutes into the concert at that point. So he started off at 9 and he's already at 10 and he can only go to 10 and get better from there.
It only grows.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, Dad, your clip that you wanted to hear
Let's start at 2050,
in part one.
part one, deep.
We have all fallen in love with part one.
Yes.
All right, 2050 it is. phrase right there is the repetition throughout the whole song. Boo-doo-doo-doo, boo-doo-doo-doo.
Did you have to stop it there? Could you not have gone for another minute or two? Come on, man. Don't you love the feel of that and the rhythm?
Yeah.
And it's like the melody playing over and over. And I don't know how musicians are able to do that except for years and years and years of practice. I commend them, truly.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of things that I was thinking about all week long. First of all, I could spend literally 4 more weeks just listening to this album and be completely satisfied. But the thoughts going through my head about the story, and we'll get into the story in just a minute, he has to sit down and perform. You know, it's not that he's a wind-up monkey or a clown or anything else. He has to sit down there and think of this right on the spot. There are times when I'm at work where I feel very creative, and I love sitting here working on a project, and I'll work for 2 or 3 hours and lose time. Then there's times where I sit here at work and I don't want to be here in this chair at all, and that time drags on so terribly. I don't know how he gets moved, how he gets ready for something like this. And again, we'll get to the story in just a minute, and we're going to cover some other stuff besides the story, because
the story's all over the place. And the for the 50th anniversary, there's now a movie based on it. But one of the things that keeps coming up in my there's the general story, but what's behind it? You know, who are the guys that tune the piano? That's what I want to know. I can't find their names. But improvisation, as I started, is not chaotic. This isn't about chaos on the scene. And somebody said he doesn't actually improvise the songs because it's already a melody that he's played, or he stole it from here, he stole it from there. But if you sit down and practice these things over and over, my instructor tells me the pentatonic patterns. Play the patterns over and over and over again so they get into your fingers, so it's your rhythm. And then from there, how do you string them together for 1 hour? So it may not be pure improvisation. It may be something that he's practiced over and over and over, but you can't practice for an hour over and over and over coming up with how to put these ideas together. And I got into the reading. He was asked about his moaning, his singing to the song, and he says, I get to the point of being full. I'm filled up, and the only thing I can do is get my emotions out. And so that's actually what it is. I'm just full. And so I start to hum along and sing along. And he says, I do it with the trio and I do it on my solo. But when you're so full up of emotions, what do? And that's what, to me, that first part of this album is just so much emotion. Now we move into the rest of the story because it makes the album what it is.
Yeah.
Slideshow. Let's get into it. So we can discuss this album.
Unless you guys have any other thoughts. Phil, you got any other thoughts before we get ready for the slideshow?
No, because we're going to talk about the concert itself later, right?
Yep.
Some of the prep, because.
Yep.
I'll
Story
talk about some of those things later.
Okay, here we go. First slide. Just like I say it every week, whatever you do it to jazz. You're going to hear in just a little bit. We do that every single week. Of course, we are talking about Keith Jarrett tonight, the Cologne concert from 1975. I did include a picture of the cover art. It's total ECM cover. You wouldn't even know that it's not ECM. You wouldn't even have to put the ECM on there. You'd be able to tell it was ECM. Black and white. He's sitting at the piano. It looks like almost he's exhausted. That's all I'm going to say about the cover. Unless anyone has any other thoughts about the cover.
Nope.
All right, here we go. Moving on to the next slide. Jazz style for the day. Of course, we are going in alphabetical order, and this style called chamber jazz. Chamber jazz is a genre of jazz involving small acoustic-based ensembles where group interplay is important. So isn't all small combo jazz chamber jazz then? I mean, if you got a piano, trumpet, and guitar. Those are all acoustic instruments, right?
Yep.
So it's chamber jazz. So chalk one more up for Miles Davis.
It works.
Chalk one more up for Miles, because
Yeah.
I'm sure he played chamber jazz as well. All right, moving on to the next slide where you can get it. I forget what you put on there last week. It's available on all the big streaming platforms. You can definitely find the Cone concert there. We would prefer you go out to your local record store and buy it local. I did put a quote by Keith Jarrett at the bottom of that slide. I love this quote so much. It really kind of fits in with the Cone concert, with what we're going to talk about. Music always turns into music. As soon as I play a key, push a key down, there's no theory anymore. When I go and I hear a sound on the keyboard, all theories go out the window.
I love that.
Kind of cool. That goes back to what you said, Drew. You know, you learn the basics once you get them in there. I've been told frequently in practicing lead guitar, you play what you practice, right?
Oh,
and if
yeah.
it free flows out and you think you're going to play something other, you don't, because it's what you practice that's eventually going to come out. So you do certain gestures, certain movements, certain whatever he's doing. This is just some of the stringing together. You know, Stevie Ray Vaughan, those guys, they threw together things that they figured out once, and then they string another one together. And it's amazing when it's improv, because you feel it. You know, as you start to improvise, you feel it's just something's flowing. And I actually can't go back and repeat some of the stuff that I've ever recorded.
Right.
And I wonder this on the Colton concert, like, could you actually ever get to a place where he'd go, yeah, I could literally replay that whole thing? Probably not, right? It'd have a different flavor. It'd have a different meaning, what he came into it with. Yeah.
I bet Mom could do it. Mom could sit down and play it. Uh-oh. Are they frozen? I think they're
It
frozen.
looks like pause.
I bet
we're
Mom
back.
Mom could sit down and play the Cone concert.
Yes, I bet she could.
I bet
Yeah.
she could.
Oh, sure.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. This
I
year,
want to go back to something, though, that Phil just touched on there, and I was looking for the quote here from Keith, and I don't have it in my note right here, so I'm going to paraphrase it. I don't want to go back and do it. All music is new, and it has to be new. And if you get stuck going back, you forget what goes forward. And that was basically his paraphrase of forget the past, move on to the new music. And so my thought was, what would it sound like if you had a big band do some of his music from this concert? Just a thought. Moving on to the next slide.
Excuse me, you know, I don't want to disappoint you all, but I have a quote or two.
Bring it.
Okay. Keith Jarrett says,
Cut. Move to the next slide. Come on. What you got?
Here,
What's the quote?
Keith Jarrett says, creativity is what makes humanity move. We were created to participate. And then he said this, silence is the potential from which music can arise. True? I would say true. Right on.
I would say true as well. And it's none more evident than in the Cone concert. He's not rushing playing notes. He lets his stuff breathe. That's another thing that I like about this whole album. Yes, he does play a lot of notes, but there is space in his timing, in his notes.
Yep.
So it's the silence in the middle that keeps the song interesting in the first place. You know, without rests in music, all we would hear is Phil just going blah 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 all the time. That's all we would hear. And he would never,
You want to hear me? I'll tell you something.
and he would never stop and take a breath. So it's
I love you said me. The audience knows who it really is.
Bad.
it's that.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Oh,
All right, let's move on to the next slide. This year in history, the album came out in 1975. This year in history, Bill Gates and Paul Allen form Microsoft. Also in 1975, the fall of Saigon, ending the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Wheel of Fortune and Saturday Night Live debut on NBC. Oh my goodness.
No way.
I did
Yeah.
not realize.
SNL in 75?
Yeah,
Yep.
they just had their big 50th. I didn't even piece that together.
Yep, for
Wow.
sure. And finally, in 1975, the birth of the famous YouTube co-host for the jazz channel, The Unconnoisseur, is born.
It took me a while to figure out what you were trying to say. I think I had a block in my head.
The famous YouTube co-host.
What did you say about Blockhead?
Yeah.
What did you say?
You guys are funny. All right, let's move on to the timeline slide. We'll get through this so we can start our discussion on the album. Keith was born in 1945. 1975, this album was released. In 2003, he won the Polar Music Prize. 2018, he had a stroke-ending career. And then, as Drew mentioned earlier, this year, 2025, the feature film of the Cone concert is going to be released. Also, while I was doing my research, right on Keith Jarrett's website, he's going to have another release called At the Deerhead Inn, the complete recording. It's going to be a 4 LP box set released August 22nd. So coming up in the next 10 days. So there's going to be another 4-box release coming from Keith.
Good.
All right, let's move on to the information slide, and we will finish the slideshow. Some of the influences that I found for Keith, and he mentions it right on the wiki page, is Dave Brubeck. He went to see a Brubeck concert and just kind of fell in love with jazz piano, just kind of fell in love with it, and he didn't look back. Of course, Keith is cool because he can play classical music as well, and the articles that I was reading said that his main influences was the classical Bach, Beethoven, and Saint-Saëns. So, Drew, did you find any other influences that you want to talk about?
I sure did. He loved jazz artists that pushed boundaries. Paul Bly was one of those. He's listed Charles Lloyd as a major influence to him. Obviously, Charles Lloyd and Forest Flower is really where he got his notoriety. But he recorded an album with somebody I'm going to talk about in a minute, and he stole the rhythm section from a piano-less band of Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman is listed as one of his influences as pushing the boundaries of jazz. Bill Evans and his Freedom on the piano, and then Paul Moten. So there were a bunch of them listed for just pushing boundaries. He also listed as an influence, although I think he had some disagreements with him, Art Blakey. And on the one album that he recorded as a jazz messenger, it was the same as our man, Chuck Mangione. Buttercorn Lady was a live album from the Jazz Messengers that Keith Jarrett and the now late Chuck Mangione were on together. So those were listed as influences.
Dad, did you find any others?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
All right, cool. Let's move on. The discography. I counted well over 100. I didn't do an exact count. I kind of lost count, but he's got well over 100 studio releases. So even if you listen to one album a day, it's still going to take you a third of a year to get through all of Keith Jarrett's work. And some of them you're going to want to listen to 2 or 3, 4, 14 or 15 times. Yeah.
A week.
Like, yeah. the genre that I've got.
Usually, Matt, you do this thing with discography where you break it down by the band as well. He has got on record 11 that I could find live piano solo recordings. And I think that I think that after I read that ended in like 2008. So I think there's probably another 10 of them since then of live audience recorded solo piano pieces. And that's in the jazz world. That doesn't include a lot of the classical work that he's done solo piano.
Correct.
Yeah, decades of music from Keith.
Yeah. All right. The genre that I've got listed: jazz, classical, free improv, which is I had to think about that when I saw that listed on the wiki page. Free improv. That's pretty much what he's doing right here, right? Cone Concert is free improv, jazz, and of course the jazz fusion. A few facts about Keith. He did get his start with the Jazz Messengers and Charles Lloyd. So as Drew mentioned just a few minutes ago, time with Miles was another boost to his career. He played a lot with Miles. Miles loved playing with him. Miles actually walked into a club one night while Keith was playing, pretty much hired him right on the spot. Said, "Hey, get that cat in my band. I want him now." So, that was a cool story that I read.
And I want to add something to that because I'm going to fill it in as we go. In a middle of one of Miles's recordings on stage, he said, "Why don't you do some solo work?" That got recorded, and that was in 1970. So Miles helped promote Keith. Keith hated the electric of things, but it was on an electric piano that they were playing that gig that got recorded. Huh. So
cool. Interesting. Final fact about Keith.
Building to something, by the
way. Final fact about Keith that I've got on the slideshow: absolute pitch is something that not everyone has. And again, you heard it in our clips, the way that he sings right along with the notes that he's playing. Now, it would take years and years of practice for someone to get to that level. There are people that can do it. That you hear it a lot with guitar players who will play a solo and they'll sing the solo at the same time. I couldn't do it. So it stands out as a fact to me about Keith that he was able to do that in the first place. Okay, let's move on to the Cone Concert. Again, the story is very widely known. Drew and I, we read the story the week that we listened to it a year ago. We're going to touch on some of the stuff that's not in the story, some of the behind the scenes stuff. But for my part here, they drove 9 hours to get to the concert. Him and Manfred Eicher in a small car, and you'll have the picture. And I don't mean to steal your thunder, so if you want, just tell me to shut up. But they drove 9 hours to get to Cologne so that Keith could do this show. When they got there, they realized that the piano wasn't the correct piano that Keith wanted to play on. They had ordered a Steinway, and the only piano that was there was some piece of junk Steinway that was in the pit for the orchestra. It wasn't the right Steinway that Keith wanted. Manfred said to Keith, "Let's just go out and do the show. I'll record it. Just have fun with it. Let's just record it anyways. See what happens." And it blows up to be Keith's very #1 selling album of all time, selling over 4 million copies, by the way. So it's 4-time, almost platinum, 4-time gold record for Keith Jarrett.
It's the highest selling jazz album and the highest selling piano solo album in 2 categories. It is the GOAT of music.
Yeah. Last fact for me, and then we'll move on to the discussion. The producer of the show, she was 18 at the time, and this was her first production. She had no clue what she was doing producing this show. She was trying to put it together. Go ahead.
I want to fill in a couple of blanks here because, as I said, I was building to something. She had actually started a year before the new jazz selections, and she was doing Ronnie Scott's trio. So she was producing shows and recording albums. And for her at 18, this was her 5th show to actually produce, but it was all on the line because it was neighborhood Ronnie Scott. It was a group of people that she had worked with before, and I'm looking for the terminology that she used on that. But she got into the show in Germany a year before and said, "I've got to have Keith here." So she began to produce new jazz in Cologne. That was what it was called in 1974. It was the 5th in her series, which is where the legendary Cone Concert takes place. So a year before she started this. And she's been building to this major finale of all these small little new jazz concerts. And this is it. So 18 years old, though.
Yeah.
The pressure behind that, we did a music festival 3 years ago now. It was the first big music festival to put together. And the pieces that have to come together, that when you get to we couldn't get this, but we have this instrument. And to think that he had driven up 9 hours, that's Fort Wayne to Nashville, basically, right? 430 some miles, it would be equivalent, to show up and realize my instrument is not here of what I'm looking for. And what pressure must have been on her shoulders. You think, oh man, especially at that age. Yeah, that'd have been heavy.
Well, it just so happens that there was a strike going on at the time. She ordered the right piano. There was striking delivery drivers, so the piano didn't get delivered. I don't think she really made a mistake.
This is some of the more of that behind the scenes that I wanted to get into. It wasn't just a strike. It was the fact that they refused to get on the roads because he had just driven 9 hours through sleet and rain and freezing rain. So all day long, they refused to drive because it was icy. January moving to Dallas, Phil. I think about the snow and ice on the road with the trailer behind us. I can't imagine moving a 19-foot grand piano and 93 keys to a concert hall in the freezing rain. So yes, they're on strike. They're refusing to do anything because it's icy and sleeting out. And then he's on the road in that R4 with Manfred Eicher just to show up, and then goes across the street, of course, for dinner. Why did he not go anywhere else? It was tough driving. But he was like, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I've got a back brace on. I've been in this car for 9 hours because I didn't want to take the train because I wanted to save some money. And now I've got to play. I can't imagine not sleeping. And I looked at it, Zurich to Cologne. He was in Zurich the night before for a different concert. So then gets up and drives all the way across for an 11:30 p.m. show. Yeah. It wasn't like a midday. The opera house refused to have jazz. And she said, it's not jazz. It's a piano concert. That's how she sold the 1,400 tickets. I'm going to put a picture up of the Cologne Concert Hall right now. That place is gorgeous. I can't imagine sitting there listening to this album. So I've got my input in.
Were there as many as 1,400 people in the audience? I saw that.
Sold out crowd.
Yeah, 1,400 people who were there to listen to a piano concert.
Now, this is the weird thing, because I think we hear the story and we forget the pieces. Keith had been performing for 5 years doing solo work. Since 1970, and Miles throws him out and says, do it. 71, he records his first album, Facing You, as a solo piece. And then he's done a few other live concerts that got recorded up until 1975. So they've had an opportunity to hear him play. So yes, it's a sold out crowd.
Well, and yeah, like you said, it's not his first solo piano concert. So you kind of knew what you were going to get when you went to the show in the first place, right?
You thought you knew what you were going to get.
What you were gonna get.
They should have paid triple for the tickets.
Drew, you've got pictures too of the Renault that he drove. Do you have that in the slideshow?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy.
Renault R4.
Yep, in the sleet and ice. That's about like that minivan of Mom and Dad's we drove to Texas.
Oh, their minivan was a luxury cruiser compared to that Renault.
That Renault.
That's true. Yeah. The tires were bigger than 12 inches.
Yeah. And I almost wanted to start this, not for anybody but you. And if you read, and I'm going to put her website at the bottom, Vera Brandes' website, not for anybody but you, is how he said that when she went out to keep him from getting in a cab to leave. She went out and begged him, please, 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 I can't refund the tickets. Please, please, please. And he said, not for anybody but you.
That's real commitment, isn't it? That's real dedication.
That is. That's cool.
And support for a young person to be in that position and then for him, the professional that he is, to say, not for anybody but you. Yeah.
I haven't slept in a day, 24 hours. I've got a back brace on because I'm in extreme pain. You get me some pit piano that's got sticky keys, flat keys. What I read, it wasn't big enough to broadcast the sound. And Iker ECM is not there to broadcast the noise. They're there to record it with the two microphones that they've put inside the piano. So I wanted the big Mama Jama with the extra keys on the bottom. And I remember Count Basie and Duke Ellington teasing each other because he kept closing the trap door and he wanted to reach those bass notes and they were closed. I think about how big a 93 key piano is.
Matt, he said Count Basie.
Get y'all. Forget you. You know what? I got this for you. I hung out with Bill Evans, so
That's true. That's true. I saw Maria Schneider in concert.
good point.
Hey.
Delaney Rice is my drum teacher.
Bruce Lee is your teacher. So, yeah, the concert hall needs a big piano, and he's got some Dookie
Pit piano.
Pit piano. So the story is magnificent to begin with, overcoming all obstacles to have a concert like this, and then using the stuck keys, the out-of-tune piano, using the broken sustain pedal as a rhythm section bass drum pedal, if you will, only to use. What an amazing concert. I mean, it just, everything went wrong. It's the perfect storm and the perfect recording.
Yeah.
Raw emotion.
All right, Mom, I'm interested to hear what you got to say.
I had to get out of my paradigm that I'm listening for a theme, I'm listening for consistency. And the more I listened, I kept thinking, there's going to be, but I have to get out of my box and really think about how majestic this song is, or the whole album is. It's just amazing. Amazing.
And I think for me, and for you probably too, we sat with a lady who could play like this.
Mm-hmm.
Judy Martin could play.
Too much.
No, that's great. Thank you, Judy.
I'm not saying she could reproduce a Cone concert, but she could play for an hour. She could do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about you listening to the album, thinking about Judy playing the album, and that was on my mind all week too. Man, I hope Mom likes the album, and I hope she doesn't compare it to Judy Martin because you know. Because that's what in my mind, how you would listen to it. Like, oh, Judy could do this, so it's no big deal.
And I did think of something about Judy Martin, though. We were at a wedding and she was playing the prelude, and all of a sudden she played like 5 bars of, I don't know.
It sounded like Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire or something, right in the middle of her prelude that she was doing. And but like I said, you just keep waiting for what's the theme going to be here.
We listened to a 2.5 minute piece that Judy played while Mom was in the hospital, and I asked her to play something. It was, I think you guys have heard it already, but yeah, we listened to that this afternoon. It inspired us, really.
Yeah.
Pat, this is for you. Goofs and all. Should I play something more lively?
Oh, that's good.
So I like what you said though. You kind of got to get out of your box and think it's a jazz concert, but it's a solo piano concert. It's not free jazz, but it is free improv jazz because he's doing it freely right then and there, improvising the whole concert.
Yeah.
So to step out of your box, man.
So out of curiosity, I went to some of his other albums and listened to some of the music and the songs. And one of the albums was a trio. And I thought, you tell me how two other people are going to follow what he's doing. How do they even know? But they do because they're professionals and they picked up where he was and what he was doing. But and then many other albums I watched him actually play. He stands up half the time when he's playing because he is so into it. It's not like just his fingers. It's like it's coming out of his body onto the keys.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Yeah. All right, Dad.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Dad, you want to give us your perspective on the album?
Yeah, when I first started listening to it, I thought there's a lot of repeat, the redundancy almost. And I had to listen to it many times, to learn to appreciate the musicianship of what he's doing. And then reading the story behind the concert added that much more impression to me. I was that much more impressed with this whole album and was taken in by it. Moved, yes. Did I feel it all the way through? Not necessarily, because again, there was so much redundancy. I would use that word, redundant. So, but definitely a very impressive album.
All right, Taylor Swift, tell us what you thought about. Phil, tell us what you thought about the album.
You know, I'm glad we're laughing because when I start talking, it's going to be hard because this week I lost my father-in-law, and the day that I called Dad, and I just said, "This has been tough. It's been really tough," and he said, your brothers might be giving you a call to see if you jump on the Unconnoisseur with them. And I'll tell you guys, the very first thought was like, that'd be awesome to hang out with my brothers. I'm here with family, though, that's grieving loss, that's going through things. And I don't really know what jazz they're going to have me listen to. That indie crap they introduced me on, I don't have capacity for this. But I'll try to say it as we're still laughing. When I started listening to this album,
Good.
it was salve to the soul.
Yeah.
It really was. And when Dad just said it, it struck me again. Until you know what's going on in a guy's life, you don't really appreciate so much what's going on. And in the same way of knowing what he had to drive through, I've driven that exact drive a few months ago. I've been on those roads, I've seen it, not in the ice and snow, but when you know what a guy's going through, and then you just pour out, right? And he poured out something that really, it was cool, guys, as it ministered to me. So thank you guys for inviting me, and
Well,
especially on this album. This was really cool.
of course, and I'm
Really
glad.
helpful.
I'm glad it wasn't Indo Jazz this week, but you already did the Indo Jazz, so you'd have been okay with it anyways. But yeah,
That's right. That's
Well,
right.
and that's
So
something
the emotion
Yep.
in the piano is what I just finished on. The emotion in the piano that came to me, that was the help. And so I listened and I listened and I listened and I listened to this album. I haven't listened to anything else that I've been listening to the last week to kind of help me walk through things. This was really, really cool. So yeah, it's a special one for me.
good.
I'll remember this album.
Good.
Yep.
True.
Well, let me go next because I know you got a lot to say. For me, it met all of the criteria: the craftsmanship, the awareness, the creativity. You cannot deny it's creative. The spirit, and just like Bill mentioned, the emotion is up there beyond scoreable to me. I love the way that it ebbs and flows. He draws you in. He takes a break and cools off for a minute. He draws you in, and he's doing that not only with the piano and with the keys, but with his demeanor, his emotion, his groans and moans and vocalese. And I didn't think I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, and I'll be honest. The very first time that I listened to the album, I thought, yeah, it's okay, cool. It's an album. That's it. All right, big deal. Let's get through this week to get some cool jazz. But when you hear the story, when you realize what he went through, when you actually sit down and listen reverently to the album, even during the clips, during the clips we have to listen reverently because that's all I'm looking at the camera and that's all I have to focus on. It is not background. It is background music, but it's not background music. You really have to focus on what Keith is doing. So I love the album.
Did you say you had to listen as you looked into the camera and you saw these beautiful faces, or what? What were you saying?
I didn't say that. That's not what I said. I see one beautiful face.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that.
And that's my mother. Okay, that's all I have to say. And we'll score here in just a minute, too.
Yeah.
I give a moment to pause because I think that there's a lot going on. The album itself, I listened to the first time, and you read the magazine. The magazine's got some great information about the background of it. In my notes, I just put, after my first listen, I just cried. Because I almost wondered, what did I just experience? And it was the rawness of somebody telling you what was really going on in their life. I've had a long day of travel. My meal took forever to get here. Now I have to eat on my walk back to the concert hall, food that is cold because it took so long to get it. I haven't eaten. I haven't slept. I've got a bad back, and I've got a brace on. I got a horrible piano, and I got an 18-year-old girl that's throwing this concert, and I'm thinking about just walking away. Not to mention, my friends are here with their recording devices, and that raw emotion just stops. And I think that in life, we have those occurrences where we have to just stop and focus, listen reverently to what's going on around us. Whether it's the loss of our father-in-law, whether it's a newborn child, whether it's the loss of a car or the changing of our normal circumstances, but crisis, both good and bad, when we're actually stopping long enough to listen to the things around us, what will we hear? And it's even more important because I'm looking at my mom and dad and my three brothers. These four squares represent, what did I say? My four brothers?
Three brothers.
The three sons. I'm looking at mom and dad and the three sons, my two brothers. This is the Rice family. We're not normal. Here we sit to talk about Keith Jarrett as life moves on. And I think that part of that is, as we sit and listen, we've learned to listen because mom and dad have both trained us that way. What's going on around you? And that's part of our weekend music as well. It influences what album we listen to. It may be the album influences our listening, or it may be what we need, and we choose to listen to an album based on that feeling. It may be a song that takes us back. We built this city. How's the rest of the lyrics go? We built this city
On jazz, right?
on rock and roll. And you start to think about the times and the places and the episodes that have taken place during those moments of life. But now we have more albums. We have 100 albums, Matt, that you and I and Dad for the last 40 weeks, and Phil's joined us for a few of those, and now back again. So to me, this album is more than that now.
Let me make 2 points to what you said. First of all, at least it wasn't a flock of cows. Okay?
A flock of cows.
A flock of cows.
Oh,
We laugh about it all the time. It's a sermon that I remember from Gospel Temple. The lady went out to hang up her sheets to dry. A flock of geese flew over and pooped all over her sheets. She walked in the house, told her husband, at least it wasn't a flock of cows. Okay? So the other thing I will say is he could have played angry that night, and it would have been a totally different concert. he didn't let all of that surrounding influence dictate what he was going to play. So it could have been a free improv, free jazz concert of him just banging on the piano for an hour, saying, "You get what you get. That's what you get." He was still professional enough to overlook all his back and the car ride and the cold food and the junky piano to play this beautiful piece of music. So that's all I'm going to say about rebuttal on your talk.
Then on this, explain then, and that quote, Matt, you sent, I think, to me, it talks about what had happened. All was starting, he's remembering, he's going on stage, all this problem. But it's the last bit where it says, sometimes when your resistance is low, ideas come.
Yeah.
And the piano, being a different instrument than I would normally play, I played it differently. But I'm kind of lost on that, even the flock of geese and the cows. But when your resistance is low, I would have thought there'd have been a lot of resistance, like everything seems to be coming at him at the same time. But then ideas come. But resistance being low, maybe is the form of that piano, because it wasn't a tightened, nice, perfect Steinbeck. He was playing on something else. What's the resistance low?
I think that's metaphysical statement. When everything is crushing down on you, and what am I supposed to do when the world is pounding me into the crucible, if you will? I've got no more resistance. I'm done. I've got a different phrase, but I've got a youth minister and mom and dad, but I'm all out of craps to give. I have no more resistance.
So let's just get this done. Let's just get this done. Yeah.
But I'm going to do everything I can to deliver for this young 18-year-old.
For the 1,400 people, for Manfred Eicher.
The sentence right in front of that, though, Phil, says, "I knew something special was about to happen once I started playing. I remember going on stage thinking there's no place I'd rather be right now than in front of the piano."
Wow.
So that's his flock of cows.
So maybe it is. Maybe it's everything's not working, but there's no place I'd rather be than right here, right now.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that connects with what you said too, Drew. There's no place we'd rather be than sitting with family. Yep. There's no place we'd rather be than right here.
Yep. So for our listeners, we are using the Jazzwise magazine's top 100 albums that shook the world from 2022. We are counting down backwards from 100. This week's artist was number 18 in the list. Let me ask you this. Do you like where it's at on the list?
We want it number 1.
I wanted it number 100. I wanted it at 100 so I could listen to it for 100 weeks.
Oh,
you selfish little such and such.
What about you? Dad? Are you happy with where it's at on the list?
Really, I am, because it helped me learn and appreciate all the other artists before this album. I would like to have heard it earlier and then gone back to it, but it doesn't mean I can't go back to it from this point on.
Yep.
And to learn to appreciate Keith Jarrett and his history and his musicianship, that's a good place for it to be.
I will say that on the 99 list from Jazzwise magazine, it was number 57. So on the 06 list, it was all the way up at number 10. So it's fluctuated greatly from 57 in 99 to 10 in 06 and then back to 18.
I can't imagine what's coming if this one's sitting where it is right now.
Right.
We got some real bangers. Mom, and the albums that you've had an opportunity to listen to with Dad and because of Dad, has this been something that you would put in a top 20 list of returning to, or would you recommend it to somebody? And then, Phil, I want to go and ask you as well. But
I think once I learned what it was, and like I said, if I got out of my box, my paradigm is right here. If I got out of that and can appreciate so much the talent that he has and the passion that he has for it, definitely, yeah.
Phil,
what about you?
Yeah, I would say so I was telling the family what we're doing, and we're sitting around talking with aunts and uncles and everyone, and they said, Phil, I guess I just don't see jazz being something that you'd be into. And I said, what's crazy is it's not. I mean, it's not my my first cup of tea. It's not the first thing I go to, but in all the weeks that we were here last year and on with you guys, and I remember telling you guys this a couple of times, there were albums that I just say, Scotty, I'm going to hit play because I got to listen to this, but we didn't last through a song. And this one, we just were able to let play. She appreciated it. And I said, if this was jazz, if this was all that I experienced in jazz, and especially, this free flow type of stuff, I'd have this on, because it's something you can have in the background. It's something that I think you can just let, emotion flow a little bit too when you're engaged with it. But if you think of it in the technical terms, then it's an amazing feat too. So you can appreciate it from all those different angles. But yeah. I would say if anyone was just like, I just want to check out some jazz, throw this album at them and let them just appreciate it. It's older. This is what it is. Just going to be a piano, but yeah, it's a cool one.
Well, you said it's older, but I still think it's timeless.
Agreed.
I think it could sound like something that he put out not
Sure.
yesterday because of his stroke, but in 2018 before his stroke.
Yep.
He could have done it then. So it's a great description, Phil. I appreciate that. Drew, core collection. If you're gonna
I'll stop you there. Yes.
okay.
It would be a record that I would own on vinyl. It would be one of the few records that I would want to build a massive audio system just to listen to on a record as it is. But because we've got digital format and great headphones, yes, it's a core collection all day long.
First
Option
time
A or option B, right?
Option A for sure all day. First time listener?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a gateway. It really
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
If you just listen to Keith Jarrett in general, I mean, he's got the Berman and Lucerne concerts.
Yep.
He's
From
got
74.
from 74. He's got All About Jazz and the Sun Bear concerts from 76 and Dark Intervals. These were solo jazz piano deals. Then if you look at the trio with DeJohnette, and then you look at his broader range stuff, it'll start really nice and easy with the Colne, and from there you're going to find all kinds of jazz. Of course, you go back to the Forest Flower, which we loved from Charles Lloyd.
From Charles Lloyd, yeah, for sure. Well, and I like his work with Jan Garbarek.
Oh man, Belonging.
Belonging, yeah, for sure. New Dance from 1979. I mean, that music is way different than the Colne concert. That Jan plays haunting, he plays mysterious, he plays fantasy almost, and so it's a different style for Keith. That's not what we're talking about tonight, but I just dig that kind of style even more with Jan Garbarek. So, all right, let's rate this album. What do you say?
For those about to rock, we salute you. If you don't want to rate, don't rate.
Okay,
But I'll start.
cool.
I gave it a 10.
I'll second. I gave it a 10.
And for the other two screens, if it wasn't at least close to a 10, I'm going to disconnect this phone call. Just saying. But what'd you say?
A 9.5 from me.
Okay. All right.
9.5.
Phil, you've been on before. You've rated albums before. Tell us what you would rate.
Yeah. Yeah. As a smooth, simple, and I don't mean it to downgrade it, but as a smooth, simple, pure vanilla, if you're like, this is pure vanilla, this is one of the absolute best. If you're looking for flavors and other kinds of 31 flavors, then there's other albums that meet those needs. But if pure vanilla, simple piano, especially where it connected with me, absolutely a 10 in that area.
Yeah. So which one of these is not like the other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? this is the neat part, is that we're all within ranges.
Yeah.
You know, last
Yeah.
week Dad blew us away with a 10 on an album that we were a little bit lower on. I'm glad that he did. So each week we get an opportunity to see our opinions of music. Mom, I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you to rate it, but did you?
I won't rate it, but I'll say it stretched me to a point that I have a new enjoyment of what it is.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Drew, we haven't said this in a while, but I remember the week that you and I did this. I feel for you, I feel like this one pierced your soul.
Yep.
Wow.
And Phil, you're going through it too. Piercing your soul. We haven't said it in a while. And I would say for me too, this one just pierces your soul. When you listen reverently and realize what he's doing, it pierces your soul. So Phil, you alluded a little bit to your week. So why don't we go through and do our weeks in music? Phil, why don't you kick us off?
Well, like I said, I was listening to other things that were soothing. I needed some soothing, and I've got a playlist that I wouldn't be able to go because there's just so many different artists and whatnot. But I've got one called Phil's Chill, and there's something on there. It's actually, you guys might want to listen to it. It's called The Watcher in the Sea. Watcher in the Sea is just a simple, smooth. Daniel O'Reys, I think is how you'd pronounce his name. O''RHYS. He's on the top of my Phil's Chill because when I start there, it flows into that. And there's a lot of piano versions. After the Rain, that's done by Tom Bencher, I think is how you say his name. And I don't even know these artists, right? And I wouldn't follow along on many of the others. But like I said, when it connected this week, where it connected, when it needed to connect for me, I love how his statement then is out of the silence. Out of the silence to me means something else, because this week we needed presence, and we needed the presence of calm. We needed presence of mind. We needed presence of just being able to grieve through things. And so out of the silence, whatever that was that then comes in, is the presence to me of God and family that's been around me this week, that's allowed to walk through the morning, right? Because sometimes in mourning, you feel alone, you feel you're silent, you feel there's nothing there. But there's a presence that's promised, and that presence is so powerful. So connecting to the soul of it, I like the way that phrase is. Definitely. How Drew said, I would say the same. Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Dad, tell us about your week in music.
It's been broad. One of the highlights for me was the 20th drum lesson that I took from Lady D. And I'll tell you what we did. We scored the first 6 measures of a song, a piece that it's going to take me a year and a half to learn, but it's called You Don't Know Where the Wind Blows by a group that most people wouldn't recognize, the second chapter of Acts. And it's just a very, very, very moving piece. And so Lady D and I, she kind of helped me set some scoring on it. And I didn't realize how the lines are, and each piece on the drum kit has a different place on the line. And I don't read music, but now I got to read all these symbols, SYM, not CYM, symbols of the different drum kit piece. So
You were there when he gave the speech, weren't you?
I'm sorry.
You were there when he gave the speech. Four score and 7 years ago.
That was
You're funny. You're very funny. See what I have to put up with these guys. Matt, you'll probably mention Wednesday night.
Oh yeah, I will.
So I'll let you mention Wednesday night.
Okay.
Mom, You're with us
Wednesday
on the
night.
show, so talk to us about your week. And here's what I'm going to set it up with. The chief buffoonery is sitting right there next to you. So if we act buffooneries, he is the chief of all of us.
You learned it well.
The tip off the old blockhead right there.
Yep. Wednesday night, what Matt will talk about too, but the big band, it's just so fun to go just hear music. And even when you're busy and you think, oh man, I don't have time to go do this, it's like, I want to do this. I want music in me. And it does. It just takes you away from everything else and lets you really concentrate. and then the drummer came over of the big band and asked Delaney if she will do the next show because he has to be out. And so,
Next month.
break your heart.
Really?
Next month, she gets to fit
Oh,
in.
cool.
She'll be there next time. Yep.
Yep.
Awesome.
Matt, tell us about Wednesday then.
Love to hear some recording of that.
Okay. Yeah. I do record. I take the little H1 recording device and I will. I'll send it to you. Wednesday
That'd be cool.
Wednesday night was amazing. And then turn around to Friday night. No, I'm sorry, Saturday night. Kendra and I drive up to Barbie Lake to hear Gunslinger play. So I got to see Delaney play on Saturday night at Barbie Lake. So it was a great week in live music for me. I was a little, I don't know. I said it at the beginning of the episode, I could spend 4 weeks just listening to Keith. So I'm not ready to move off of Keith just yet. Really. I listened to this album at least 5 times all the way through, probably 6 or 7 times at different points, jumping in, jumping out. And then the other stuff that I listened to by Keith. I didn't get off of Keith too much this week. I mean, my music it wasn't all over the place. It was Keith Jarrett pretty much all week long. So yeah, that's my week. Except Keaton and I worked our tails off. I don't talk about Keaton as much on the episodes on the channel, but Keaton came over and helped finish my sprinkler system.
We got it fixed.
We did. We got it fixed. We had to dig 50-foot worth of trench for PVC and inch sprinkler pipe, and then the electrical cable. What am I trying to say? The low voltage cable.
Low voltage.
We had to run the low voltage cable, and then he stayed and adjusted the heads and everything for me. So yep, it was brutally hot out Friday afternoon and Saturday, the times that we were working. We did go to breakfast on Saturday morning at the VFW, so that was good to spend time with everyone. And then so it was a great week for me in music overall.
Did Keith not tell you that the best thing about a sprinkler system and trying to fix it is turning it on while you're working on it? You should never be overheating when you're working on your sprinkler system.
I know it was low voltage cable, but he was sitting there making all the connections on the cable, and I thought about spraying him once or twice, but
you're already sitting in a puddle of sweat. What does it matter if it's fresh water or sweat water?
He's bigger than I am, and he's faster than I am, and I'm not going to get beat up by my son.
I don't blame you. So Keith, I've just loved listening to the stuff that he's produced over the years, and to know that we met him because of the Forest Flower album.
Yeah.
That was our first real introduction to Keith Jarrett, and what an amazing week of listening to him. But it goes back to the same thing. It reminds me so much of Judy Martin. Marvelous Martin sat down at a keyboard, and she could do any of this without thought. And for her, it wouldn't be improv because it's stuff that she's played or played over or has memorized. It's at her fingertips. And so for me, that memory of Judy and her abilities stuck with me this week. So it was an emotional kind of thing. And of course, Phil, while you're in Colorado, just has been on my heart and my mind this week. So, I'm glad that you were able to be in the States for that. Big time. That's
a perfect one for it. Yep.
Well, and I'm glad that you took the time out to join us tonight too.
Yeah,
so thank you for taking time out away from your family to be with us family.
Family becomes a lot more important as you think of the time you have and the possible time you don't have. And it's getting harder to be further away, but it's good to be able to be this close, right? We were a day travel this way. We got 2 days back home, but yeah, 2 weeks. Actually, we get 19 total days here.
Nice.
Good.
So yeah. And the boys were able to come out. It was really cool. Brady and Caleb were able to come out, spent time with the family. Almost every single person came in except for Ryan, who's Dave and Carla's son, who's serving in the Army, stationed over in Hawaii. So, yep, it was good to have family and the importance of it.
Yep.
It's good to have this time.
Okay, Drew, tell us what we're in for next week.
I don't have my magazine. You'll have to do it.
Too bad. You just go get it.
Tell me what it is, and then I can repeat it.
Nope. I did last.
Next week, we have Cecil Taylor, Unit
No, we
Structures.
did-
We have Herbie Hancock, New Standards.
already did it.
Crap. We have Bix Beiderbecke, The Legend of Bix.
Oh, we already did it. That was
I
a
don't
long
have
time
any.
ago.
I really don't have my notes in front of me, Matt. So you'll have to tell me who's next week.
All right, next week.
I suppose you want me to tell.
Hey,
Wynton
Go do
Marsalis, Black Codes from the Underground.
Did it, loved it.
No.
Got the T-shirt.
Matt, tell us. You
No,
got your
Dad.
magazine there. Tell us. I'm gonna hang up.
Dad's
Show's
got it.
over.
Okay, all right. Here we
Go to
Here
commercial.
we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Put a
This-
commercial.
This one hit us at a different level, and we've experienced albums before where we didn't know what we were getting, never heard of the artist. We chuckle about it all the time. This one hit us at a different level. Next week, at number 17 in the countdown from 100, we're talking about Ahmad Jamal Trio. The name of the album is At the Pershing, But Not For Me. It was released on the Argo label on LP and CD. It's got Ahmad Jamal on piano, Israel Crosby on the bass, and Vernell Fournier on the drums. It was recorded the 16th and 17th January 1958. It's that golden year of jazz. Golden, yeah, those golden 2 years, 58, 59. You pretty much anything that comes out those years, you know, is going to be banging. So put Ahmad Jamal Trio in your ears, At the Pershing, But Not For Me. And it hit us like a ton of bricks. But you'll have to tune in next week to hear the discussion about Ahmad
I'm
Jamal.
not sure if a ton of bricks or a ton of feathers weighs more. Which one? Which did it hit us with? Was a ton of bricks good or the ton of bricks bad?
Well, you'll have to find out next week. Number
Yes.
17.
I'm looking forward to the introducing the new album of the week, which
I know.
I
Yeah,
already know.
you already know what it is.
Yeah, I'm holding it out though because it's
Well,
it's
Tune in next week.
it's
Tune in.
marvelous.
Tune in next week, but you have to text us tomorrow so that we get
Oh.
a week with it if it's going to be that good.
I might.
I might. All right. From our family to your listening devices, thank you guys for tuning in on this really special episode. The Cone concert was super good, but having the three sons and mom and dad sitting here is absolutely priceless. Thank you guys for tuning
Absolutely.
in. Bye.
Thank you.